Hey, what's going on, my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and today's video, I'm gonna share with you all the different signs and symptoms that you have had and are experiencing currently a Kundalini awakening. It's kind of a rare time to be alive because a lot of everyday folks are finding themselves going through this incredibly life-changing spiritual metamorphosis known as a Kundalini awakening. But if you're anything like me, I wasn't prepared for such a thing. I didn't know there was such a thing as a Kundalini awakening. So when a lot of these different changes started to happen to me in my body and my mind and my life, my emotions, all these unexpected and unusual changes caused me a lot of concern because I thought there was something wrong with me, like my life was spiraling downward in a way that made absolutely no sense to me. Come to find, all these different signs and symptoms are actually indicative of something very positive, a major soul level blessing from the universe. So this video is going to touch upon the different ways that you might be being affected right now due to your Kundalini awakening. I'm going to go into the different physical signs and symptoms, the different changes that happen with your mind and your perception of reality, the spiritual transformation, some of the mystical experiences you may or may not be having. We're going to talk about how it affects your emotions. If you're watching this and you are going through this, and you already know it affects your emotions big time. Also, I'm going to talk about how it affects your life. Your outer life does tend to start to reflect this transformation you're going to. Also, your relationships. And lastly, your behavior. This is going to be kind of a deep dive into the Kundalini awakening symptoms. And I almost wasn't going to make this video. But as I was doing some research, I realized a lot of what I found online, just to me, didn't quite capture it. It didn't seem like the best, most accurate depiction of what it's like going through a Kundalini awakening. No BS. This is how it feels. This is what it does to you. So I wanted to put something out there for those of you who were like me and found themselves completely, frazzled by the whole experience. But once I found out, oh, this is all part of something so positive, so amazing, such a blessing, that's when my experience began to change, and I started to be able to work with the different experiences that this Kundalini awakening was bringing forth into my life. So with that said, let's start with some of the physical signs you're going through a Kundalini awakening. One of the main ones is fatigue. It's been put to me, I read in a book anyway, that you could look at a Kundalini awakening like 240 volts of electricity going through a 120 volt circuit. Obviously, too much power for circuitry that's not equipped to handle it. What happens when you do that? You blow the circuit. It fries the circuit. And a lot of time, that's kind of what's happening to our nervous system as it is being exposed to this higher frequency, new level of power, energy coursing through our being. It can just make us feel fatigued, where you have like what feels like adrenal fatigue, just not a strut in your step, and just a very noticeable exhaustion. It can be extreme. It was extreme for me for a while, to the point where I was unable to exercise. And at that point in my life, I was like really in shape. I was a personal trainer. I was very into fitness, and I couldn't work out because I kept my body stopped being able to recover from it. And you just might notice this in your day-to-day life. Another one is insomnia. This high frequency energy can also keep you awake at night, and you might not know why. You might feel exhausted, like I was talking about before. You probably are tired, but you're like wired, almost like you drank some kind of amphetamine drink or something, or caffeine. Your body's tired. Your mind needs a break. You know you need sleep, but you just can't slip into sleep. And this can be also very frustrating. I remember there was times where I would like lay down to go to bed, and I was just like, I could just tell, nope, It's not going to happen. And I would just lay there all night, wide awake. Another common symptom is having, and I'll explain this, blocked chakras. We all have these different, it is said anyway, that we have these chakra points throughout our body, usually traveling up from the base of the spine up to the top of the head. There's these different points of energy. And it is said the Kundalini energy is, its goal, if you will, is to rise up the spine and clear out all of your chakras of the karma, of the energetic weight, of the unexpressed emotions, etc. And eventually it can go all the way up your spine and it can merge you with all that is, with God, with the divine, that sort of understanding. But anyway, because a lot of people have not really prepared their physical vessel for all this Kundalini energy, this energy can sometimes get stuck and trapped in just different portions of your body. A very common place, and this happened to me big time, is where it gets trapped in your head. And you feel like you have horrible sinus pressure that just won't go away. It can be in your head, also in like your third eye. It could be anywhere, but a lot of times it just gets stuck in people's heads. And for me, it was so severe that I couldn't even think clearly. I had like really, really noticeable and sometimes almost debilitating brain fog. I couldn't even read. I literally could not read for a while because reading would bring my focus into like my mind, and it would like almost like conjure up more and more of this Kundalini energy. It was so active in me that it would make my brain feel like it wasn't working very well, and I couldn't comprehend what I was reading, and reading made the pressure that was already there 10 times worse. So that's kind of an extreme case, but you might have that. You might have this like sinus pressure that affects your clarity of thinking, and you just don't know why. Maybe you don't have allergies, and all of a sudden you have this sinus pressure that came out of left field in the dead of winter that makes no sense. A very classic physical symptom that you are going through and have already had a Kundalini awakening is heat, tingling, just a sensation of energy and vibration near and around and oftentimes going up your spine. And this can be kind of minor, where there's just, there's a little heat, I guess, up my spine at times. And it can go to the whole other end of the spectrum where it's very intense. For me, it was very intense, where it was actually so much energy that would just start, the way I would put it is like gushing, I imagine like a fire hose gushing up my spine, this very like discernible physical feeling, electrical energy would just explode up my spine and out the top of my head. And it was so intense, I would just have to lay down and let it do its thing. And it would come on randomly. And initially, before I understood what was happening, it completely freaked me out because it's such a visceral, it's such a real experience. It's not like an imaginative type of thing. It's like a physical sensation that's unmistakable and had such a power to it. I felt like my body and my brain was not going to be able to handle it. But eventually, luckily, I learned, and I sensed intuitively when these things would happen that basically the only thing I could do was just let go and relax. And when I would do that, I would find that powerful energy would become it would become blissful and ecstatic and almost like orgasmic at times. But anyway, you might not have that. Some of you probably do, and you're like, thank God, I'm not going crazy. It's actually a powerful, positive thing. But some of you might feel tingling, heat, vibrations, just energy going up and down your spine at different points. This powerful energy, as it makes its way up your spine, as it makes its way through your system, can also cause us to shake involuntarily, where you're just like, there's just, I think it's our body's way of just trying to handle the energy. So you might, I see it all the time. I'm a breathwork facilitator, and I run these breathwork ceremonies. And when it's in person, it's not that uncommon that it does affect people's Kundalini energy. and they will start to just sort of shake, sometimes violently shake. It's kind of weird. It's powerful, it's positive, it's a release of energy. But if you find yourself shaking for no reason, well, it very well could be your Kundalini. Physically, you also become very, what I would call, energetically sensitive. What does that mean? It means that, for one, you can perceive and discern all the different underlying energy of stuff in your life, including people, even thoughts, ideas, music, food, places. All of this has like an energy that you can now pick up on. How do you know? How do you pick up on it? Because it affects you. You realize how much it affects you. And you become very sensitive to things that are not compatible with your own energy. Now this will subside, as will all this other stuff if you're going through it. But there can be a time when you just feel like an exposed nerve. Very vulnerable to the random energies of all the different things going on in your life and environment. And this might lead you to spend more time indoors, spend less time around people, change your diet, change even like your some of the TV shows you watch, the music you listen to. All of it will have a frequency that will either be good or not so good for you. You just become very energetically sensitive, temporarily. Another rare one I'll just mention briefly is they call it spontaneous kriyas. This is where you find yourself, especially when the energy is very active in your body, it kind of comes and goes. It can cause you to go into a spontaneous kriya, which is where you basically start doing yoga almost against your will. Not against your will, it almost like you'll find yourself intuitively moving your body into various postures to help the energy align with your system. And it can just look like all of a sudden you're doing random yoga poses. I also see this in breathwork as well, where people just start doing like, especially with your spine, spinal bends and stuff, you start doing things or you're breathing. Well, why is he doing that? I don't know. Yeah, Kundalini. It's something that can happen. Another one I want to talk about, and this I think will bring relief to a lot of you, especially if you're experiencing, and also maybe some clarity. Another thing that can happen when you're going through this Kundalini awakening is you will develop physical problems. Maybe it's a really sore back, some kind of ailment that really gets your attention. And this particular ailment, ordinarily you would go to the doctor, you'd find relief in like conventional ways, and you find that doesn't work. Sometimes the doctors even say, there's no problem here, your back is fine. I've done a million tests, MRI, you're good. And yet you're like, no, I'm in incredible pain. There's something going on here with my back. Sometimes the body will manifest physical problems that are connected to unresolved issues. It's almost like your body's trying to help get your attention to maybe a belief you have that's, a self-destructive belief or a limiting belief. It's impacting your life negatively, as an example. It could be an unresolved emotional issue. It could be an imbalance in your daily life, something you think you need to be doing, but no longer need to, but your mind is so stubborn that it's not getting the message from life that you gotta let this behavior or thing you're doing go, so your body will develop a problem. As an example, and by the way, it's always helpful. It's always like, there are better ways to live your life where you can be more aligned, more balanced, and happier. But if you're not living at that potential, your body will reflect it. For example, for me, what happened when I was a personal training gym owner, and my gym started to succeed, and I had all these clients, and I kind of knew it was almost unsustainable. I was working too hard. And I had the sense to hire a trainer to help offload some of the clients, but my mind said no. I was afraid. I just had all these different sort of fears about it, so I ignored an intuition and just kept training people, right? And I eventually developed golfer's elbow, which is like a tendonitis in the elbow joint in both elbows. Both elbows, all of a sudden, golfer's elbow. Nothing worked. I had the wraps on both things. I had the Bengay, the cream. It would not go away. It only got worse. And it was because I was doing too much training. one of the things I would do is I would hand clients dumbbells. And this was like an overusage type of thing. And once I was able to, luckily at that time, I realized that sometimes the body will give you clues about how we could improve our life. I realized, I got to hire that trainer. And once I hired that trainer, gone. The ailment was gone. So it can be annoying, it can be frustrating, but if you are able to take responsibility for your physical problems and see what it symbolizes for you, then it can actually be a blessing in disguise and help you improve your life. And a lot of times once you make whatever shift it's encouraging you to make, the physical ailment will go away on its own. It'll either go away on its own, or all of a sudden you'll just happen to like find the solution. Now with all that said, I'm gonna close out the physical signs and symptoms of a Kundalini awakening in a moment. All of these things sound bad. They sound like inconvenient, right? And also unusual. But number one, they do go away. I had my Kundalini awakening probably like 15 years ago or so, and I had a lot of these symptoms very intensely for a few years, I admit. I don't have really any of them anymore, for the most part. Certain ones come and go here and there, but it's like 99% subsided. And what's left, all these different, they seem almost like a bad weather. Like when will the clouds part finally, and when will the rain stop and the sun finally comes out? Because this is just annoying. It's not always about waiting the symptoms out. Most of the symptoms, very similar to what I was saying about the physical problems that have like sort of correlated messages or symbols in your life, all of that kind of does as well. And all of these different symptoms result in, number one, your body being able to handle all of that energy. Where your body it's almost like your circuitry adapts, and now you're running on a more powerful, psychic, spiritual energy that results in you just being more intuitive, and where your whole life, especially in the way you treat your body with the food you eat, your self-care, all these different things finally come into alignment. Your behavior starts to align with your newfound potential, and the eventual result is very good health. You feel really healthy, really strong. You don't get sick hardly ever. I have allergies right now, you could probably tell, but I normally don't get sick at all, except I had certain things here and there, and you eventually find yourself in like a superb state of health, I would say. Now, with all that said, quite honestly, there are certain things I do have to be mindful of. I still have I'm susceptible to fatigue, I would say. I have to be very balanced in the way I live my life, the demands I place on my body and my mind with my balance of work and family and lifting weights. All these things have to be very, very mindful, but good, that's a good thing. So I share that message with you just so you know, if you're going through it and you're not sleeping, you're freaking exhausted, your circuits are fried, your chakras are all clogged up, and you're like, what gives, bro? It all will subside, I promise you. Okay, now I will get into some of the emotional signs and symptoms that you have had a Kundalini awakening. The first thing I must mention is very intense fluctuation. High highs, bliss, ecstasy, divine love, in alignment in all ways, optimistic about your future, to very low lows. Some of the lower lows than you probably thought you would even experience. Deep, deep lows of depression and melancholy and just apathy, just where you feel just utterly joyless. And then it can kind of fluctuate a lot. And sometimes people go around thinking they're bipolar. I did. I literally went to a psychiatrist at this point before I knew I was having a Kundalini awakening. And I took this I did this like sort of a half-assed little checklist of 10 questions. And I got 6 out of 10. And they said, okay, well, you're bipolar. And they put me on Lamictal and these other like freaking heavy-ass medications. And I thought I was bipolar because it's very similar to being bipolar, honestly, where you feel almost manic and then it's extremely, extremely depressed. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, with no real rhyme or reason either. But luckily, intuitively, I had a sense that this is not it. I'm not bipolar. There's something else going on here. And I didn't take the medication for very long. But nonetheless, if you have these crazy highs and low lows with no rhyme or reason, that's a big sign right there. You can also go through periods of like a prolonged depression. This is where some people get into the whole idea of a dark night of the soul, where, you know, everything in your life might be okay and sort of on paper just fine, and not really wouldn't justify you feeling extremely depressed, but you might find that you go through a period of just incredibly deep depression that you just don't understand why you would be feeling so low. Another very clear sign is you become very empathic, very aware of other people's feelings. So much so that you might mistake them as your own. You might be, especially like busy, crowded places, it can almost seem overwhelmingly chaotic because you're feeling a lot of different people's feelings all at once. And it's kind of a like your system is being overwhelmed with emotional information. So you might find that you don't like going in public. I remember for me, like things like going to a mall, like an indoor mall especially, or even a busy grocery store, it was something I avoided as often as I could because it was just so freaking intense. And it also is somewhat disturbing, honestly, when you start to see almost like the potency and the power and the far rippling effects that someone's bad mood has on everybody. Like one time early on when I was like driving in a parking lot, and I don't know whose fault it was, but me and this one woman almost like collided, and we both slammed on our brakes, and I looked over at her and she had this like angry look on her face, and it almost felt like she became this monstrous, evil, crazy energy that she just projected at me. And I was like, oh God, stop. You know, it was just someone who was just pissed off on the road, something that happens extremely commonly, obviously. But my experience of it, because I was so opened up and empathic, was just crazy. It was almost like out of a movie. Now, real quick, I don't want to go off on a tangent too much here, but there's value in this, my friends. For one, at least for me, I was on this high horse thinking everybody else was very negative and no vibration, and it was all them. What I realized is that all these other people's emotions that I feel, it's only because there are the same exact energies existing in my body that aligns with them. So I've learned it does not serve me to blame other people for what I feel in my body, even if I'm very empathic and opened up. I have to match that. I wouldn't have attracted that energy into my life had I not possessed it. And there can be a time where it's still best to kind of shield yourself and recluse indoors for a time, because it's just like you can't even do any real inner work because it's just too overwhelming. But eventually I had to like get back out there in the world and get back out around people and take responsibility for how I felt. And what I found is that when I was able to resolve some of the energies in myself, I could still be clearly aware what other people were feeling, but not feel it as if it was my own. But that was in direct proportion to the inner work I did on myself. Another big thing is repressed emotions will start to bubble up into the surface. And they can seem to be triggered or provoked by things going on in your life, things people are doing within your relationships, just your life circumstance. It can trigger these deep emotions where your emotional response might not really be in proportion to what's going on. And this can also be kind of challenging, but it's good because all those things that you're feeling that are coming up, even if they sort of seem out of place, like situation doesn't warrant this type of intense reaction in your body emotionally, They were there. You were walking through life with these emotions. They're your emotions. It's nothing to do with the circumstance. And it's a blessing that now you are awake to them and can integrate them or release them or see what they're all about and bring them into some type of resolution or completion. So it's not a fun experience, but it's a very spiritually and emotionally productive experience. It's like all of a sudden you're just more aware of all the unresolved emotions you've been carrying, and life will start to conjure them up to the surface to where it sort of forces you to deal with it. If it was sort of a mild anxiety, like a lot of people are just sort of unhappy, discontent. They just have a generalized anxiety. They take the medication and stuff, and it's like, that's like almost like a situation where they're just so oblivious to what's actually causing that anxiety that they just try to medicate it on a very surface level, never getting to the root. And while it's uncomfortable to be exposed to the root, which can be very heavy, you might feel intense fear, intense grief, intense depression, intense sadness, intense. And everybody else seems like business as usual, hunky-dory. You're feeling these crazy emotions and you're like, why? What the hell's going on with me? You're waking up to what you and everybody else is carrying as well. Only the difference is you are aware of it and you can process it, and you are sort of really compelled to deal with it because it's not something you no longer can suppress. And even though it does involve some work, the end result is you being freed of all that and getting to go through life and experience real happiness and deeper levels of love and spiritual connection and authenticity. That's like the truth of who and what you are is underneath all of that emotional debris that now is flailing up at you. Sometimes this emotional upheaval can take on a confusing quality because it might not seem to have come from your lifetime. Meaning, sometimes we can go through past life, take it for what you will, past life trauma that we never dealt with. A lot of times it's ancestral trauma. Maybe, for example, one of the things I went through for years is my grandfather, and I don't know for sure, I speculate this is what it was, but my grandfather lost his son. His son died of some disease when he was only 10 years old. And then my grandfather became an alcoholic, and I don't think he dealt with it effectively, And I went through a phase where I had an intense grief energy. Like my grandfather never grieved that, but here I am grieving it. And I would find myself just in this, you can imagine the anguish of someone who lost a child. I felt that. And to me, it was like, I thought, is something going to happen to one of my kids? It was such a clear feeling. It was such a clear, like, this is exactly what it is. It's like a grieving of a child. Why am I having this? My children are fine and healthy. God bless, everything's great with them. But here I was feeling those feelings as if they were my own, and it would come up, and it happened for a few years. I processed that, among many other things. And there's more to do. By the way, I share all this not from a state of completion. I'm still going through this as well, but this is just an example. But once I finally, one of my friends is a kind of an expert in this. Her name is Bridget Nielsen, and she explained to me that there's such a thing as ancestral healing, and people going through an awakening of sorts. So a lot of times they will, at some point, confront this and go through this, and it's a blessing. You're healing for these other, I don't know how to even put it, these other lives, these other people that you are connected to. It's all in our DNA. And this Kundalini awakening goes so deep that it purifies you of even that. So is it wild? Yeah. Is it time consuming at times? Yeah. Is it uncomfortable? God, yes. But as you start to process some of this, it leaves you in an incredible place of expansiveness. And again, it just opens you up to more of your divine potential, more love, more bliss, more connection, more authenticity. It's always the result of going through this type of experience. And just to highlight the results of all this once more is as you go through this cleansing that a lot of people just resist and hope it ends. It's a process that accelerates and beneficial if you can participate with it. You know, you can be willing to sit with these emotions coming up and cry them out, journal them out, share about them. But as you do this, the point I'm trying to make here is you are able to tap into deeper levels of bliss, divine connection, and above all, love. A lot of people don't even feel true love. I don't even either. I've decided. I'm heading there though, and I'm getting to experience deeper and deeper and deeper levels of pure love as I heal all this stuff. So there's a very worthwhile reason to do all this, my friends. And also, as you clear away some of these unresolved emotions, you start to, it's very much reflected in your life, in your relationships, in your life circumstance, and your life begins to change in a very positive, up-leveling sort of way in direct proportion to the degree in which you process these surfacing emotions. Now I will get into some of the mental effects of a Kundalini awakening. One of the things that is very common is brain fog. I mentioned this earlier about where I couldn't really read. That's true. But another thing that would happen is I would just have kind of a generalized brain fog. And this was very tough because I was a personal trainer at the time when it was intense for me. And a lot of my job was just being a good conversationalist. And I found where, to me, it was like my mind was just not working. I was very not sharp, not a good conversationalist. And I felt like dumb, I weighed like 10 times dumber, I would say, without being rude. I felt dumber. I felt like my mind was slow because I had this just fog. I couldn't think clearly. So it happens and it goes away. You also become very aware of all of your dysfunction. Initially, you become aware of other people's dysfunction. But then eventually you start to realize all this dysfunction you see in other people, you also have within yourself. You might just realize how dysfunctional and crazy the mind is. Just like your mind, the ego, the voice in your head. It's not very sound-minded. It's not sane. It's fear-based. It's oftentimes very negative and insulting to you, the being, and you just become aware of it. You just realize how crazy you are in a way, and that's a good thing, because eventually it happens when you start to disidentify with the voice in your head and see it as such, just a voice in your head. But for a little while, there can be kind of, before you've created enough space, you can feel just like an incredible resistance to your own dysfunction. As this is happening, also, in a more positive light, you have a very heightened intuition, where you'll start to have a very just strong knowingness, a strong sense of all important things in your life. You'll be able to read people very well, know if they're a good fit for you, know if they have good intentions, know if they intend you harm. Regardless of what they're saying and what they're doing, you can sense into it with people. Also, your life path. Even though there's quite a bit of confusion for a time, you also will know what to do when you need to do something. And sometimes it can be big stuff, like I need to quit my job. I need to cut off this relationship. I need to explore this new topic, even though it's not like me. It's uncharacteristic. You just have this knowingness of how to navigate your life, which is awesome because you're now no longer running your life based on the unresolved emotions, the crazy voice in your head. That's what most people create their realities from. That. No wonder the world is the way it is. You start to tap into a different source of guidance within yourself that is divine, that is wise, that wants wholeness and harmony and love for all. And you start behaving in accordance with that intuition, and your life, as well as other people in your life, everybody benefits. Sometimes you do experience old memories. Like you'll have memories of when you were like a really young child. Sometimes these memories can even be of past lives. And a lot of this can happen kind of in the dream time, where you start to, it sounds weird, but yeah, you have like memories of other times, almost like it's you. It's like you remember yourself in a different maybe personality or similar personality, and there might be people in your life that you recognize but had different roles. Maybe like your mom is your sister or something, random switch around, and also a very different setting, what you were doing. And it's like, how would we even come up with that? And you just have it, like where you just have this awareness that you've lived, or maybe are currently living these other lives. And because you're going through this profound Kundalini awakening, expand your consciousness to such a degree that you start becoming aware of this. But a lot of times it's more practical and more relevant. A lot of times it's more relevant to have these memories of your like early childhood. For example, this happened to me not long ago when I was with my wife and we were walking in this outdoor mall, and there was this this loud, obnoxious fire alarm going off in one of the restaurants. And the restaurant was closed, so nobody was like dealing with it. And it was just this really loud, to the point where we like crossed the street to avoid it, but even still. And I found myself being very, very bothered by it. It felt so intrusive. It felt so like I just can't stand this freaking sound. And my wife was like, yeah, it's annoying. What's your deal though? And I was aware that this is affecting me a lot. Why? And then I had this memory. My dog got afraid when I snapped. Sorry, Rosie. I had this memory of when, I didn't know when, I just knew I was a little kid, and I was like in my room at night in my crib, I believe, and the smoke alarm went off for no reason. But I was this like 2-3-year-old little kid. I was this very young kid. And I remember like freaking the fuck out and just climbing out of my crib and going to the door like, what is happening? To me, that, the smoke alarm sound, it's very intrusive, very obnoxious. To a little open, innocent baby, it was a traumatic experience for me. And I realized like it's caused me to be almost on edge. It really did traumatize me. And it was funny, I had this memory. I just knew that something like this happened when I was a little kid. And then I remember like a week later, I was talking to my mom about it on the phone, and she said, oh my God, I can't believe you remember that. You were 2 years old. And there was very clear, my parents remember it too. It was a nap time actually, and they came up and they like helped me and stuff, but that fear and that panic stuck with me, because the way my mom explained it is that the fire alarm would go off and I'd like cower in the corner. And then you know how it kind of takes breaks, it would stop and I'd get up and I'd try to leave the door, and then it would go off again, and I was doing like one of those. The way she explained it to me, I don't know how she knew, maybe through the baby monitor, but that's what my mom said. Anyway, so that, how do you remember when you were 2 years old? Well, it happens. And it's very helpful because I realized that traumatized me. Even though I was safe, nothing happened, literally, I was safe. It has caused me from that day forward to go through my whole life on edge against another fire alarm going off. So it's actually very beneficial when these things happen, because they can lead to these great epiphanies and breakthroughs in your life. Definitely your beliefs, your worldview, your beliefs and concept of reality is going to expand and change a lot. And it will take its natural course. But I remember when I had my Kundalini awakening, I wasn't really a spiritual person, that much anyway. And right after, I started becoming fascinated with near-death experiences. I started reading, I found this website online, I think neardeath.com or something, and it was just all these different people's experiences. And for some reason, I just couldn't stop. I was just so intrigued. It was so enjoyable to learn about this, and just so mind-expanding, because I believed it resonated. That holy cow, all these people died, literally, proven to be, physically died, and had a very similar, extremely positive experience. They talked about love, they talked about the light, they talked about all their loved ones being there, they talked about the life review, all these things, and I was like, holy cow. And up until that point, I guess I just assumed once you die, that's it. But all of a sudden it's like, no, maybe we are these eternal souls. And that's just an example. And then that eventually led to like learning about extraterrestrials and things like that. And all of a sudden my concept of what like the size of reality in Victor's mind is way bigger than it once was. But it took many years of just coming to terms with that, because as you expand this, sometimes we have these attachments to our previous worldview, especially if you're very religious. A lot of religious people go through kind of a little bit of a crisis because they have these strong beliefs. A lot of them monotheistic religions in particular have a lot of fear, a lot of like heavy fear around not believing, not seeing the world through this little lens. So when you can't help but question those things because your experience is telling you otherwise than what you believe, there can be a lot of fear and a lot of resistance to letting those things go. So as you expand, it's very positive, but there can also be a process of letting go and attachment temporarily and grieving of these old paradigms of thought, and it can be challenging at times. But regardless, all of it, I wanted to say, I haven't said it yet, it all happens at the perfect timing, at a perfect rate. It's like your Kundalini energy, it knows the rate in which you can transform. And it never pushes you beyond the edge. It will take you to the edge constantly, but it never pushes you beyond. So regardless of some of the challenging aspects, you're always going to find yourself making it through. Always, always, always. You will find yourself enduring and then benefiting, and then something new happens and you're going through it again, and every little thing that it presents you with, you're going to find yourself rising to the occasion. And as you rise to the occasion, you rise in your consciousness. Another kind of a cool one, it can be cool anyway, is I put down, I'm reading off this board I made, by the way, if you see me looking over there. I put down closed eye visuals, especially at night. You might go to sleep at night and see stuff in the back of your eyelids. And you can see all sorts of stuff, man. You can see like geometric shapes, you can see colors. If your chakras are opening, you might see like lights, like indigo or white lights. It's like someone turned the lights on inside your mind's eye. You can see sometimes very unusual, sometimes even disturbing images of faces, and it can be kind of creepy, and it almost like will take on your state. It'll like reflect your state of being. If you're in a good state, sometimes it'll be very positive and like high, beautiful. But if you're feeling fear or something and you're having the closed eye visuals, it can take on kind of a sinister quality. And it's just something that happens, especially at night. In fact, a lot of these symptoms tend to be amplified at night, especially the energy going up and down your spine, the surfacing of old emotions, the memories, and a lot of this can like happen more so at night because you're relaxed. You're finally relaxed, and then the Kundalini can move about your system and pop open all these different things. But I also found a correlation to, almost like as the chakras are being cleansed, as emotions are being purged, it would reflect to me in these closed eye visuals. There was also like a multi-dimensional quality. So maybe the Kundalini is moving about, healing this or that, and I have a feeling, a memory, and then it's like in my mind's eye. So it can be a whole experience. No wonder we're not getting any sleep. It can be a whole thing. Also, your values start to change. You might start to realize that, holy cow, like I'll give an example, like me and my friend went to a Tony Robbins event years ago, and he has, one of the things he would have us do at his Date with Destiny event is examine our values. And he had like this big list of values, and a lot of our values are pretty screwed up. For example, a lot of people's value significance, kind of standing out in life, having praise, popularity, people thinking highly of you. That is a very, very top of the list for most people if they're really honest with themselves. Having a lot of money, having nice things, looking cool, all these different things, you start to become aware of your own values. And when they aren't in alignment with your truth, you'll change them naturally. And that was one of mine, was significance. I was very significance driven. I needed a lot of attention and validation. And once I realized that doesn't even make me any happier, And it's still something I'm actually working through, quite frankly, and it could be a work in progress, all this stuff. But anyway, you start to change your life. So for me, it was like, once I realized this, it was like, oh, I don't actually care about that as much. Why am I putting so much time and attention into that when there's other things that are more important to me, like my family, like being happy, like living my life purpose? So as your values change, your life sort of starts to change and reflect that as well. As you become more aware of what your true values are. A huge shift is you start to lean more into what people call the witness state. Not all the time, it will oscillate. But you'll find yourself able to objectively observe yourself, even including your thoughts and your emotions, and even like the things going on in your life from more of a neutral, expanded viewpoint. And this is, I think, how we start to make positive changes, because we're almost looking at it more objectively, not so entrenched in this limited ego structure. You start to step outside of it and see. And once you look at it, you realize it's all jacked up. All the unresolved emotions, the crazy thinking, your life circumstance. So it can be kind of like a lot of big pills to swallow as you have this witness stance. But it also simultaneously takes the edge off of it, because you're no longer so identified with the problems in your life and the unresolved issues. You can see it, okay, well, that all may be true, but I am this awareness. And this kind of comes and goes and oscillates, and there's times where you're like revert back and you are entrenched for a time in the ego, and then you snap out of it. So it's like this dynamic process of contracting and expanding, but over time you settle into like a baseline that is far more witness-like than before. And it's just very valuable in a lot of different ways. It really helps you take the edge off of life. It helps you make wiser, more conscious decisions. And it alleviates a lot of the anxiety that most people have because they're so identified with the inevitably dysfunctional ego personality structure. And you find a lot of peace in just like knowing that that's not all you are. Okay, now let's get into some of the spiritual or unusual or mystical side effects and symptoms and signs you're going through a Kundalini awakening. One of them is you'll notice this big time in your dream time. And this will, it'll fluctuate quite a bit. But you might have experiences, including but not limited to, where you have a lucid dream. That's where you wake up and you realize you're dreaming. You might have that more often. I had times, especially earlier on, where I would actually have out-of-body experiences where I was laying there and unable to sleep, and I would feel my body vibrate, and I would pop out of my body. And then, for me, it would turn into a lucid dream, but that can happen. Just astral projection, lucid dreaming. Also very vivid dreaming, where you have also all sorts of crazy stuff going on in the dreams. It's almost like your dream time reflects the incredible changes of your awakening. And an awakening is more like, it's just simply said, it's waking up to all that you are. And as you're waking up to all these different dimensions of yourself, it's like put out there and projected into your dream time. So you can have past life dreams about extraterrestrials, spirit guides, all sorts of wild stuff can happen. Also, another part of that for some, and for me and especially at a time, was like very negative dreams, negative entities, I would say, I had to confront in my dreams, where I felt like for a time my dreams were being infiltrated by negative beings. And I don't know, I can't tell you what that actually is, but it definitely seemed like exactly as I said. It didn't seem like just benign subconscious projections of fears. It felt like these other entities with their own intelligence found my dreams and came in to torment me. And not only that, that would actually lead into me feeling like I was actually being haunted. Even like when I would wake up, I felt their presence there in my room, in my house. And I went for a while where I was just terrified to go to sleep, man, because it was so frightening. It was so crazy. I couldn't believe, is this something that's actually happening to me? Is this really an issue I gotta deal with? Who do you go to for such a thing? I had no idea. Eventually I have other videos about that going much more deeply, but that's something that can happen. Luckily, just real quick, if you're going through it, for me, it resulted in me coming into my power. It was so invaluable. I wouldn't trade that for the world. There was a worthwhile benefit to this. You can also become aware of your karma. You can also be aware, it's almost like, can recognize a karmic experience. And you can become aware of some of the lessons you wanted to learn in this lifetime and some of the themes you came to explore. You become aware of that, which is very awesome because then you can work with it. You know, most people, I would say, who are not going through an awakening at all, experience their karma unconsciously in physical terms. Meaning if you know, maybe I murdered someone in a past life, which you'll find most of us have, as weird as that sounds. And maybe I did, right? And I come into life and I'm not going through an awakening. This is a metaphor here, an example. I would have to go through actual experiences to sort of resolve that energy imbalance. When you're going through an awakening, you don't have to play it out physically anymore. You become aware of it. You become aware of the mistakes you made in these other lives. And it can be a lot, man. I'm not going to get into it, but I have some very heavy things that I became aware of that I did in a past life that I'm not at all proud of, and I'm just almost sick about it. But I don't have to pay the karmic debt in this life because I'm aware of it. And I can make new choices in this lifetime. You can kind of, in a sense, rewrite your past without having to have life teach you all these harsh karmic lessons. You get to participate in your karmic resolve consciously. And don't worry, it's not like you become aware of all your karma and all this. It's like, this may not even be relevant to all of you, but it's just something that does happen. It happened to me. And it comes at a pace in which is relevant for you in your life. And it's a huge blessing. You don't have to play out karma the way you used to. You also might become aware of a couple things. One, that you do have spirit guides, and you might even get to communicate with them if you're lucky. You might just some way synchronistically stumble upon the realization that you're not alone, that there are, I would say, very intelligent, loving, helpful souls, consciousnesses that are with you always, helping you, guiding you, supporting you, protecting you. Some people develop quite a relationship with their spirit guides. Me, I've gathered that they prefer to be kind of hands-off, but I've had a couple. I know they're there, and I know it's kind of comforting and also fascinating. One of the big things that most people eventually find themselves learning about, I would say, is, I don't know how to put this nicely, but you become aware of how somewhat, depending on how you look at it, enslaved humanity is. I wrote down over there prison planet, quite bluntly. You become aware of how reality is set up in order to keep most people at a very low level of consciousness and high level of fear, high level of being docile, easily influenced, easily molded for the benefit of a few that have learned the psychology and learned how to play off it. And that can be a whole pill to swallow as well. But in the end, what you realize is that you don't have to play that game. All of that might be true to a degree, but you don't have to be affected by it. You don't have to let it bother you. And for the most part, you don't even know it's there. I went through a phase where I was going down the rabbit hole so much and discovering all this crazy information about like what's going on with the world. And I worked myself into such a frenzy, so much fear, so much anxiety, so much anger. And meanwhile, it's like, look out the window, the birds are chirping. I could take my kids to the park later. Like, while that all might be true, It's not something actually going on in my life in this moment. So therefore, it doesn't serve me to dwell on it and to freak out about it and to try to preach about it and to try to fight against it. None of that works. None of that helps. It just drives you crazy. But anyway, there's a time where that's just part of life, part of reality, and people go to different depths with that. Some might not even feel guided to learn about that at all. They just know it's not going to serve them. And that's kind of where I am now. I don't think about those things anymore. I haven't talked about it in quite a while. There was a time when it was relevant to learn about, but that's about it. I prefer just to kind of focus on my now and focus on my own power. I can do a lot of great things in my life. Even though all that stuff's going on, I can have an amazing day today. And so can you, and so can everybody else on the planet. And after a while, if you really step into your power, you learn how to break away, to break out of 3D, as some people say, where you're living your own life in a very unconventional way, where you're not so much tied. You don't have as many cords tied to that reality, and you are free. You are sort of like living among that, within that, but not of it. A very common thing is to have a very intense interest in learning about all this stuff. Learning about spirituality, learning about metaphysics, esoterics. None of these things may have been on your radar at all, and all of a sudden you can't get enough of it. You're just diving down these rabbit holes because it's so fascinating and it's ringing true to you. It's resonating with you, and you know that, wow, there's something, this is so crazy. The reality is so big and vast and mysterious and so multidimensional, and I believe it. If that feels more real and more true to me than what I was taught to believe about life and reality and all the limitation. This feels more expansive and real. And it's just so fascinating and exciting and interesting to learn about. So you might find it to where sometimes we go through a phase where we start to neglect our life because we just can't get enough of all this cool stuff we're learning about. Most of the things I talked about kind of have a season. They come and go. But there is one more thing I'm going to share about before moving on that's very important and prevalent and lasts, I believe, for the rest of our life. And it's one of the biggest blessings of this whole awakening. It's the uncovering, the revealing, the remembering of our life purpose. Some of you might feel annoyed at even hearing that because you've been wanting to find it and haven't yet. So you feel like, screw it. That's just a silly concept. I don't agree. I don't agree at all. I do believe that we have these, we have something inside of us that we can offer the world, a magic, a gift, an expression where we're able to channel through and align with the power of our soul and create or do or exemplify something that's helpful to the whole in some way. Maybe it's the plants and animals, maybe it's people, maybe it's just your family, maybe it's just your home. It could be little or big, irrelevant. What comes from that, the witnessing of yourself doing something that's a contribution to the whole, gives you a missing piece of the human puzzle. It gives you something that makes you feel complete and happy. A sense, a knowingness, an awareness of the fact that you have a purpose. And for a while, what's awakened in people is the desire to find the purpose. I want to find it. What it is, I don't know. I know this is not it. I know this job is not it. I know none of this is it, but I know it's there. I don't know what it is though, but I want to find it. And we look for a long time and we think we get it and then we don't, and we can kind of jump all over the map for a time. But we do find it. We do find it. And it's not as simplistic as it sounds. It's not like there's this one purpose and here it is, and now I got it. I'll make glasses for the rest of my life. It's not. It's dynamic. It's more about understanding that you can work in a partnership with your higher self, your soul, even just the creative ideas floating in the world. Almost like a ideas floating in the collective consciousness, the collective energy fields, you can start to bring in, create, express, share through you. Inspired ideas taken action upon to help and better the world in some way. You get to be a participant in that, and whatever that means for you. And will imbue your life with such beauty and depth and meaning. And it can also drive you bananas because it can be a little bit demanding. Your purpose might take you somewhere where you never thought you'd go. Somewhere that really conflicts with who you thought you were going to become. Something that conflicts with your current job and life circumstance. But you got to do it, you got to go, you got to flow with it. Purpose. It's a game changer. There can be a time when you're going through all this, when you just want it to be over. There can also be a time when you realize you are an eternal spirit. You just want to get the fuck out of Dodge and go back. You don't want to be here. But when you find your purpose, you can understand why you would have chosen to come here. Because it's so awesome. It's so satisfying. And that's one of the main things I like to help people do. In fact, there's a list of different things I'm always doing. I don't even know what it's going to be at this point, but if you are enjoying this video and you want to work with me or learn more about me, there's different things below the video that I focus on helping people find their purpose. Because I know once someone finds their purpose, everything improves in their life. So if you want to check it out, links down below. If not, totally cool. We'll stay here with the video. But the purpose is a huge, huge outcome and benefit and life-changing blessing of this Kundalini awakening experience. Okay, my friend, I hope you enjoyed this video. By the way, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you got something out of this. I talk about this kind of stuff. And I basically created this YouTube channel because when I went through my own awakening, there was none of this stuff. I didn't know what the hell was going on with me, honestly. And I found there to be a strong lack of like grounded, effective, practical support and information for like normal everyday people going through a spiritual awakening. So that's like the foundation and the mission behind my channel. And if you subscribe, and especially if you turn on the notifications, YouTube will let you know every time I do a new video, and it's kind of spontaneous as I'm intuitively guided. And also I'm making a part 2 of this where I'm going to talk about how this Kundalini awakening affects your life and your relationships and your behavior. So it'll be up here if you want to check that out and learn and kind of continue on the conversation. With that said, thank you for watching, my friends, and much love to you.